All righty. Fantastic. All right. So, welcome everybody to this new and improved uh, TACDA presentation. We're going to try a new little format for here and be a bit more interactive. So, just to start things off, got to read the lovely disclaimer. Nothing in this presentation should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The opinions of the viewers and the presenters, in this case, can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of TACDA. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. So today we are going to be having a generalized question and answer session. Its topics are going to be, it's essentially an open floor for everybody, be it current events, preparedness questions, how to prepare for something, uh, specific questions for the experts. And we'll go for about 30 minutes or potentially to an hour if we've got a lot of questions. General format is just type your question in chat. You just ask one question at a time, be it whatever the topic might be. If you have multiple, that's fine. Just ask one at a time and then wait a minute or two before asking another one. If there's a specific person you want to direct the question to, feel free to specify it. So, for the people who are here present today, the experts who are available to answer questions, we've got quite the board, literally in this case. We have Jay Wimpy, who is the president of TACDA, specializing in power failure, off-grid survival, sheltering, civil defense, and radiation detection. We have Bruce Curley, the vice president, specializing in emergency response planning, civil defense strategy, threat analysis, and disaster recovery. We have Sharon Packer, the secretary, who is specializing in nuclear weapon effects, shelter design, radiation, EMP, all hazard sheltering, and civil defense. Paul Sulfrey, yeah, I tried for all, I tried.
Good.
Seifried, Seifried, board member. He specializes in EMP, off-grid survival, shelter construction, firearms, all hazard sheltering, nuclear weapon effects, and current events. We have Jim Stevens, who is also a board member, specializing in disaster response, operational field support, medical rescue, and military matters. We have Roseanne Hassett for general TACDA organization questions, essentially the operations manager of the organization. Um, and myself, Parker Twiss. I'm a board member as well. I specialize in nuclear hazards, EMP, general disaster preparedness, emergency management, long-term preparedness scenarios, firearms, off-grid survival, and current events. So basically, between all of us, we cover quite the range. So for everybody, for anyone in chat, feel free just to essentially just like drop some questions and I'll start reading them through and see, and we can have someone take them. So, first one from Lola, where can I find Jay's pool shock calculations for emergency water use? I heard he had changed those. Ooh, that's a good one. Does anyone want to take that one who knows that specific brand?
Can answer that. We should post that, I guess, Roseanne. I can send that in.
Okay.
There was some question in the original document that I put out associated with the bulk density of calcium hypochlorite and and then the actual amount of chlorine that it can release. So we did update that. I I did actually measure the bulk density of the material, and you could do that yourself just to make sure. But the good thing is that the calculations or the amount of chlorine that you really need in your water isn't all that precise or whatever. Anything 1 ppm and above would get the job done for most water. As long as it's quite clean, doesn't have any or relatively little particulate matter, and if you can have up to 3 or 4 ppm, and it's still not going to be harmful to anyone. And a lot of times you want to do the disinfection, then maybe let the water sit for a while, and let some of the chlorine evaporate off before you drink it anyway. So it's not that critical, I guess, that you get the exact amount. But I do have that paper, and I guess we could put it either on the blog or wherever it can be accessible to everyone. Is that Useful.
I believe so.
What do
Yep.
you
And
say,
Yes, the
Paul's
blog
also
will.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Jay was talking about with the chlorine. Chlorine kills most viruses and bacteria pretty well. And as he mentioned, the as long as you don't have particulates, say, over 1 micron. However, straight bleach does not kill cryptosporidium or giardia. And so the good news on those is that those are pretty large, like anywhere from 6 to 14 microns. They're kind of oblong, like a tablet, and they're easy to catch in a 1 micron filter. So, I would recommend the bleach treatment and filtration, at least, to 1 micron, so you're not getting cryptosporidium. But of course, the viruses are going to go through a filter that large. But, the bleach ought to do a pretty good job on viruses. So I'll turn it back over.
sounds good. I think, yeah, we gotta definitely, I think we need to keep these concise. We're getting a lot of questions. Next one, I can take this one. This is a pretty short one. How many are planning for, it's basically evacuations for tent cities and official support from the LDS Church for these tent cities. I personally don't know anything regarding that. I do know for in general for the LDS Church, they do not have a dedicated response like team. I know this because I've asked them for my master's degree to interview. Hey, can I can I can I interview one of you guys for your operations and stuff? So the LDS Church works largely with existing organizations, so Red Cross, so on and so forth, utilizing existing organizations as much as they can. They don't have like a dedicated, this is the arm that is going to go and, respond, if that makes sense, like FEMA. Next one. Oh goodness, we're getting so many questions. Oh my gosh. How many people, this is from Coper, how many people actually try to live out of their bug out bag and practice using it, what it was made for? That's a good one. Not enough, myself included. If anyone has some in-depth responses for that one, 'cause I know for me at least, it's one of those, I should probably do this, but I don't do it enough. Jim.
Yeah, living out of your bug out bag is pretty much similar to what you do in the military, because when you go to the woods, you have your rucksack with you, which is, good size, good all-purpose backpack, and you have other things going on. And we always try to eat, because we always seem to go to the woods before the cooks do with the food. So you go there, and then we pretend like we're in a war, because you go in and you secure the area, and once the area is secure, then you can bring all the ancillary people along, like the cooks and the admin people and the radio guys and all that stuff, and you make your little camp or whatnot. And so the best way of learning to do your bug out bag is to make one, and then take a weekend and go to a camp, like a national park or someplace, or in your backyard. You don't have to get all elaborate, just go out there, set your little tent up if you got a tent, live out of your bag, and make a commitment to yourself that I'm not going to go inside for much of anything, and see how well that you do. And you'll find every time I went out, I always found one more thing, one more little thing to put in my bag for like the little flashlights. People come out with these big old flashlights. The best ones are these little bitty ones from in the LED, and the light is a feather, but have 3 or 4 of those, because at night, you don't want to stumble around, because you're not in a tactical situation really, but you could be. But yeah, so go out. The only way of practicing it is to go out and do it, and then gee, how many days of food do I need? How many pairs of socks do I need? How many of this, and how many, do I need a rain fly? Do I need, um, uh, all this stuff? And then you have to figure it out. If you're going to be in the summertime, you have a different load. Then the wintertime, you have a different load, because you got to carry all your cold weather gear with you. Your thick socks and your gloves and things like that, and spares, because nothing makes your life more miserable than having wet cold feet, okay, or wet warm feet, or wet feet at all, at least for me, and having stuff on my hands. So that's the best advice I can give you, is to go out and practice it.
There,
Cool.
there's also a little test you can do. I just wrote a whole piece on my Substack about, people don't get around to it because they think of it as tedious. But an easy way to do it is when you're going on vacation, basically everything you need for a vacation. Uh, I'm in West Virginia. We're going through the mountains. We have cell phone blackout areas for miles. We have mountain passes that are just incredible. And so if your car breaks down, you're in a survival situation. And so what I did in the article was I compared everything you need for a vacation is everything that you need to survive an actual disaster. And so if you can do that, it's a nice, easy way to actually do it. And then if you start to accumulate experience that way, it just builds. And so you'll have a bug out kit that's very practical because it's the kind of thing you might use on a vacation. And it just makes it psychologically easier for people to do.
I know Paul takes his bug out kit every time we go any place to lecture and every time we go any place out of town. He's always got that bug out kit in his car. And so I think we need to get in the habit of when we're a little ways away from our house, we need to be carrying it. Sometimes it's a little risky to leave nice things in the car, but when we're traveling, it would be really good to have those bug out kits.
Fantastic feedback. Yeah, basically the best, as Jimmy mentioned, the best time basically to test the things when you have a support system, not when everything has gone sideways, essentially. Yep, Paul. Then I think we got one more, another one.
If you haven't seen the movie, The Book of Eli, that's a good primer because you'll learn quickly that the most important commodities in a grid down was water and the little alcohol towelettes in the little envelopes. Those were the most valuable barter items because, of course, they weren't making them anymore. But anyway, if you haven't seen The Book of Eli, I highly recommend. Over to you.
It's a solid one. Actually, I think this next question actually would be for Sharon or Paul. It deals with electromagnetic pulses. From Stephen, from a residential homeowner standpoint, currently connected to the electrical grid, what proactive or protective measures can be taken to protect circuits within the home from EMP damage? I'm concerned about remaining connected to the grid if multiple EMP events occur, and this makes me think a transfer switch is one measure, but I'm just guessing at that.
What you want me to take that, Sharon?
Yeah, and talk about those the expense of that. I mean, it really is quite expensive, but if you can do it, that transfer switch would really be a good.
Okay. Ed Bjork explained to me that E1, the EMP is divided into three segments, E1, E2, and E3. E1 is the early high voltage, low amperage component. And at the weatherhead of your house where the power line comes in, you can expect 3 million volts and about 45,000 amps. And he said that E1 EMP will flash across 22 inches of dry air to ground. So if you've got this little space, in your transfer switch between the contacts, that's not going to work. The transfer switch doesn't work on high altitude EMP. Off-grid solar is pretty immune to EMP, especially if you shield all the wiring from your solar panels and in your house in an MC cable. But the off-grid solar is particularly effective at nullifying the horrible effects of EMP E3, the last low voltage, high amperage component. And I have a picture here of a circuit breaker. I don't know if that will show up. Tell me, Parker, if that shows up.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. That is a circuit breaker panel involved in a EMP test at the White Sands Missile Test Range about 25 years ago, and that was being exposed to the effects of E3. So that can last up to 20 minutes, and basically the wires inside buildings will glow like toaster wires for up to 20 minutes. So your house could burn down, and your neighbor's houses will burn down. And if all your cool stuff is in the basement, that's not a good thing. So you might give some thought about where you're going to put your real important stuff. You may not want to have it in your house. Now, EMP, E1, E2, and E3 can be pretty well muted, I'm told, by electrical engineers with a isolation transformer between your weatherhead and the power company. They're not cheap, but it will block the effects that I just showed you in your house. And hopefully your house is not close enough to your neighbor's house that if his house burns down, it'll burn down your house too. But that's my really short answer on that.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. From Steve, how reliable are Lifestraw brand straws for lake water or polluted water? I can take that one briefly. Lifestraw, I mean I like the brand itself. I really do like. They make multiple levels and different state, essentially different products for different purposes. Just the little tiny straw is a good backup to your backup. It's not the most efficient. And it's mainly designed for sediment, cryptosporidium, and the bare bone basics. It would not filter this is the straw filter, the thing that everyone throws in their bug out bags. It would not do chemicals. It wouldn't do heavy metals, pesticides. None of that. It wouldn't hit viruses. None of those would be hit. It is strictly for sediment and the big stuff. So it is worth knowing that before you get into it as a good, hey, last ditch. Yes, if the water looks clean and it's likely to just have cryptosporidium or bacteria, then the straw filter might actually, be a decent option. But outside of that, you can go for the bigger and beefier options. They've got the Lifestraw Home, which is useful. They have the Community, which is fantastic because that thing is made for, I think it's like 20,000 gallons plus. That thing, it takes out quite a bit. So as a brand, I would personally recommend them, but you have to make sure you know what scenario you're planning for with the individual filter. If anyone else has more experience on that one.
I guess I'd like to suggest that you can look at the individual filter. If they have a carbon filter element associated with the particulate filter, carbon does an excellent job of absorbing anything that's organic, and so it could actually remove chemical contamination as well as microorganisms. And so you just have to look at the individual filter, whether, whatever brand it is. If it has a carbon filter component, it is good for at least a short period of time in handling microorganisms and chemical contamination.
Yep. Paul.
Um, these are the filters that we're talking about here are stopgaps, like to get you from point A to point B. Hopefully, point B has a better setup for your water situation. So, if any of you are really serious about long-term water purification, feel free to contact me through TACDA. I'll be happy to share a long-term solution. But these are just very short-term filters that we're talking about. And when I had all the experts at my dinner table at a banquet that knew all about EMP, I asked them how long it would take to restore the U.S. power grid if anybody would take our credit card. And the first answer was 1 to 2 decades. And they all concurred with that. So you're talking about being on your own for all your water needs for a long time or the rest of your life.
It is not a very quick thing to fix, and that is a understatement of the century. Let's see here. Reliable. What do you continuing on for water purification? What do you from let's see here. What do you suggest to get radioisotopes out of the water? That would be radioactive isotopes.
Um, Crescent Kearney's book on nuclear war survival skills has a expedient water filter that you can make out of a 5-gallon bucket with gravel and bath towels and compacted earth.
And clay, it's
Clay being the operative word here, and that does a pretty good job of capturing cesium and strontium and that sort of thing. But then you have to make the water biologically pure. So there's that. I don't know how good the filters that I use in my off-grid water system are at capturing those isotopes, although the carbon filter, Jay is our chemical engineer here. The carbon filter, I'm hoping, will do a pretty good job of arresting radioisotopes. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I would say radioisotopes, I don't think generally would appear just on their own as an ion in water. they're normally going to be associated with the particle. And so I would say if you have a good particulate filter, you're likely to do pretty good at removing the radioisotopes. And carbon, it seems to love everything. It loves metals, um, and organic matter and such. So again, the carbon filter element would actually tend to work very well also. One thing that you might consider is, if you have a low range uh,
Really.
uh, meter, you can actually test the water and see how radioactive it is.
I had a comment too. The beta particles and alphas also, they have a charge. Betas are negative and alphas are more of a positive, but that the clay will cling to those negative and positive particles. And so you want to make sure that when you're getting the water, you take it off. If you're in a pond or something, take it off the top. Don't stir up the bottom, because they do have mass and they'll go to the bottom of the pond or the bottom of a barrel or wherever you're getting your water. So make sure you're taking it off of the top, and that you do you get it filtered without the particulates.
The carbon filter that I'm referring to is made in Michigan by Americans, and it weighs 100 pounds empty. It had 100 has 100 pounds dry, so it's a real serious carbon filter, and it's designed for 700,000 gallons of capacity. So there are good filters out there that you can use.
Hey, Parker, I wanted to also mention that all of the questions so far have been discussed in our journals of civil defense. So I would like to recommend to everybody to subscribe to the Journal of Civil Defense so that you can have all of this information in your hands when you need it. You can also go to the website at TACDA.org and go to the journal archive section. And if you're logged in, you can download any of the journals for free and get articles on all the things that we've been talking about here, even the radioactive water. So, and I did put a link just a minute ago in the chat for the radioactive water if you'd like to download that.
I will put a link in there for the journals. Very, very good point. Let me put that in here. Yeah, there's a lot of repeat questions. I think I need to sum up. Let's see, link to the journals, Journal of Civil Defense. For water, yeah, I think a lot of these. Because the next one, let's see. We have so many. But the next one, there's some that are specific. A brief one will be like a rapid radios for bug out communications. There are no contract 4G Nextel type radio. I don't personally have any knowledge of those, so I can't speak to yay or nay.
I'd say, I have them right now. From what I understand, they do rely on the basically internet links to work. So I'm not expecting them to work in a grid down situation. However, they are very convenient, and I've tried them in fairly wide areas out of state and everything, and they seem to work pretty well.
Awesome, thank you. Brief one here is a decent hand card. I do not. Does anyone use hand cards? I know those are I know those ones that would be. Oh,
I guess
awesome.
well, I've been using a what they call a gorilla cart around the farm for a little while. Used them quite a bit. They're very handy carts. You can, well, and I liked them so much that I recently purchased another one from Costco. It's I think the 9 cubic foot model, and it comes with flat free tires, as in it's
Yay.
kind of a solid rubber tire,
Cool.
and seems to be pretty good bearings on the axles. So, something like that, if you're looking for a hand card, is actually pretty handy. It was $249 at Costco, but that might get you started, and it seems to be pretty easy, and they are rated for up to 1,400 pounds.
Fantastic, thank you. The next one here, let's see. Response there. That one's done there. Where'd it go? There it is. Are there good mental preparedness mechanisms for yourself and family members for managing the bug out process and scenario? This mentioning of how kind of creating a muscle memory of practicing with bug out bags and bugging out scenarios. So, does anyone have suggestions for other mental preparedness mechanisms and exercises? Jim.
Yeah. Um, again, you, you train as you would perform, okay? And so my suggestion is to, like before, practice it, okay? Know that if you're, prepared and whatnot, you're not going to die, okay? You're not going to die, just because the lights went out, okay? Just because the internet went out, you're not going to die, okay? People were living without lights and internet for thousands and thousands of years before we invented it. So you'll you might not have air conditioning and it might be uncomfortable, but you're not going to die. To go out there and start getting some muscle memory, learning how to survive what they call fieldcraft. Okay, go out to the woods. There's find you a friend that likes to go camping or whatever. Boy Scout troop or something. Anyway, I learned it in the Scouts when I was a kid, and then went into the military and had a whole lot of chance to do stuff in the woods. And and you go out there, you practice your knots, and you go out there and you learn how to pack up your bag, and you learn how to cook your food, and you learn how to go find some water, and all that stuff. Practice all that stuff. Practice makes, perfect practice makes perfect. Just, so if you practice wrong, you're going to do wrong. Okay, so just have some confidence in yourself. Now, anytime there's something like this is happening, everybody's going to go through what they call um, 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 adjustment disorder. Okay. An adjustment disorder, because my background as a nurse was mental health. And so one of the things that I had was mental health. And I got my master in, and they have adjustment disorder, which is kind of like a depressive thing. You have a lot of the same signs and symptoms of depression, where you just, life sucks, and that sort of thing. So you find out, look up the signs of depression. Thing is, with adjustment disorder, as soon as you start to adjust, then it gets better. By the time you get some confidence in yourself, that you can go out there and you can start a fire without any matches. Okay. My glasses, I went out there the other day and with my glasses and I started a fire. So I don't, so that was one thing that I didn't have to, that's just one more thing in my brain that I know I can do. So I hope that answered the question.
I had a comment years ago. I was concerned with the event of an actual nuclear disaster and how many people maybe would be hurt in accidents of a number of kinds. And I thought, I really need to deal with injury. And so I ran on an ambulance as a volunteer for about 3 years. And you see a lot of things in 3 years on an ambulance. But if you're not running on an ambulance, get a real deep first aid book and look at the pictures. They've got all kinds of injuries, wounds. And if you just kind of look at them and get used to seeing them and seeing, some people look at a picture and they faint. And so, so deal with physical emergencies as well. Learn some good first aid.
Sharon and I, we had the privilege of attending the National Emergency Training Center symposium on grassroots civil defense just before the Desert Storm happened. And we broke up into different workshops, and Sharon and I were separated. And after a while, we heard all this laughter coming from the next room. And I found out later that it was Sharon Packer teaching everybody how to make a pair of glasses, expedient glasses, out of a piece of white paper. And I'll let Sharon expound on that, because
I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. You put a little hole in the white paper and you can look through the hole and you can read pretty good.
You can read, yeah.
Oh, that is fantastic. Yeah, essentially just doing those exercises and kind of having a very, very broad set of it, of kind of demystifying it, be it wounds or improvising, so there's not that panic. Oh, I need this now, because then now you're dealing with adrenaline on top of everything. So fantastic advice. This is another product question. Has anyone tested the OTS Osmo Seal and desalinization filter bag for survival? I have not heard of that. I'm gonna Google it.
That sounds like
because we're all
yacht, a yacht item.
I have interesting. It's a boat survival kit. It turns seawater into a grape flavored drink. Salty grape is probably not what I'd go for good taste, but
I would have to check
uh,
that one out, on
yeah,
the,
There are
yeah,
saltwater filters, but they're very slow and expensive.
yeah. It looks yeah. I think it looks like a incurred mass bringing submerged filter will swell. Okay, so basically, it looks like it's a very slow osmosis filter where there's a membrane wall, and the water will slowly flow from one side to the other. So.
Hmm. So it's got
I think
manual.
that's honestly, jokes aside, I think it looks really interesting because it also has like a vitamin C, potassium, and electrolytes. So I think it's a very interesting product. I just don't know enough about it to give it a yay or nay.
And while you're in the seawater, uh, boats make a really good radiation shelter. If you have any cover overhead, because the radiation keeps going in the water, you don't have all of that contamination from the water. And if you have a boat with a little cover overhead, you can wash that off and be in the middle of a lake, and that's a good fallout shelter.
Very good point. Um, there's a lot of questions here on how to prepare for an EMP, like protect electronics. One specifically for a metal garbage can. I can briefly touch on that one, and then pass it to uh, Paul, Sharon, and others. I found in trying to DIY a Faraday cage with a metal trash can, it can work, but getting a seal around that lid is really tricky. I had to use foil, I had to use basically chicken mesh, and I had to use foil tape essentially to seal it because I could not get a solid seal around it. It was really finicky. I personally went, and this is TACDA does not endorse any specific product unless it's on our store. I'll take a look. But I for my Faraday cages, I go with Mission Darkness. That is Parker's personal preference, just because they publish their results and are like, here's all the test results. So that's the one I personally go for. I know you can DIY it. You just got to be really careful. Um, and it takes a lot more like fine tuning than I currently have the capacity for. But yeah, metal garbage cans, at least in my experience, can work. You just have to see that lid is just a real pain to try to seal in my experience.
Now, I don't know what kind of wire you were using, but a fine metal mesh wire that's malleable. If you just cut that off at about 6 inches wide in the whole circumference and fold it on the inside and out, and then force the lid over the top of that, you get a pretty good contact. But you could still get some slot antenna effect. But I think I think it would be pretty good, and make sure that you insulate anything on the inside away from the sides so that you're not touching your radio or whatever it is right to the metal side. Insulate it with blankets or towels or some kind of any good insulation.
Yep. And when in doubt, I mean, 6 layers of tinfoil just to wrap it up
I would,
into a bill foiled in a ball.
I'd like to suggest, well, and I wrote an article, it is in the Journal of Civil Defense, about creating some Faraday cages out of, say, a metal cabinet or some of those military clamshell containers that they just fit together. They're made for medical equipment, I guess, but they, well, any metal container can be made to be a pretty good Faraday cage with a little bit of tape or aluminum tape. They make aluminum tape to tape together ductwork, and I found that not all aluminum tape is created equal. There is some where the glue or the sticky stuff is actually applied directly to aluminum. Some actually had somewhat of a polymer base to them. They had aluminum on the outside and they had a polymer base that was sticky. Those types of tape did not work good. The ones that had just sticky stuff on aluminum, they actually worked pretty well. But I actually had a relatively large cabinet, a steel cabinet that I taped the all of the seams on the interior, and then once I closed the doors, there's kind of a, there's the cap space between the doors and the top and bottoms, and then even the hinges or whatever. You can tape those, and you can get a very effective EMP shield just using the aluminum tape. And the most important thing I would say is you can actually test that with a pair of cell phones. If you put a cell phone on vibrate, you can make up whatever container you think would work with the aluminum tape, and then call the cell phone inside the container. If it does not receive the call, then you've got a fairly effective Faraday cage. If it does receive the call, then you need to keep working at it and thinking about it a little bit more. But it's fairly easy to do. I took a lot of pictures of the tape and such, and so that is in a previous issue of the Journal of Civil Defense.
And
Thank
there
you.
are also metal cans you can pick up at the hardware store, which are paint cans, but they're
Oh,
metal
yeah.
cans and they seal nicely. And so you can throw a cell phone in there in an emergency to protect it from EMP. Hopefully, at least it's something rather than having nothing.
Yes.
And if you're using cabinets, make sure that you're sanding off any of the paint, taking off the gaskets. The tape, I think, is much better, but if you have to get in and out of that, it's a real nuisance to have to take the tape off and put new tape on every time. But you might check your container if you have all of the, get it down, the paint out and gasket out. Check it that way and see how good it is, and if it needs to be better, then go the tape route. But there are some pretty
the cans that they sell at the hardware store actually have no paint. They're just metal. So
Solarc is a company in Southeast Texas that manufactures EMP hardened inverters and solar panels, and they have their own EMP simulator, and they also send their products off to government EMP simulators to test them up to 100,000 volts per square meter. But they did an interesting video in which they took 3 handheld radios and put them inside of a little garbage can, put the lid on it, put it inside the simulator, and zapped it, and the radios worked. And they said, see, that shows that the Faraday cage worked. And then they put the radios inside the Faraday cage and zapped it without the Faraday cage, and they all worked. So it really didn't prove anything about the Faraday cage. I'm just saying that small devices really aren't that susceptible to EMP. No. And the other thing I wanted to point out is the real problem with EMP is that it destroys the infrastructure that keeps you alive. Power plants, water purification, sewage treatment, supply chains, manufacturing, medical care, everything, that's all gone.
Relay stations for your phones.
Yeah. And so, credit card swipes, that's a fantasy.
Right.
Yep,
probably so too, but
it all goes down essentially. I think the next brief one here is how do you protect your solar panels from EMP? Is there a way to wrap them? I mean, probably just a larger cage. I believe I found a it was a study they did. I think it was probably 100,000 kilovolts a meter. It was really high up there. They tested them and there was like barely any noticeable degradation to extremely high levels. That was just the panel, though. It wasn't talking about the inverters. It wasn't talking about the charge controllers, but the panel itself. If it's just the isolated panel not plugged in, those are likely fairly resistant. Paul, go for it.
So Solarc put a standard off-the-shelf panel inside the simulator with the leads coiled up really tight, and there was no degradation to the solar panel. But if they uncoiled the leads, so you had like 4 feet of leads, then it severely degraded the panel. So, So what the key here is to shield the wires that go from your solar panel at the outside down into your charge controller and so forth. That if those wires are shielded, then the conductors will not harvest the energy from the EMP. Shielding is cheap.
Paul and I shelter in steel shelters. We have the corrugated steel pipe shelters, and sometimes we have antennas that we have that we can connect that go out. But if you're shielding and sheltering any place, make sure that you wind those any of your leads and your plugs, your wires to your plugs, cords to the plugs, wind them in a small coil, and they're not as apt to pick anything up. So if it's in the shelter, you may still have enough of a leak someplace, even in our steel shelters, that we could pick up some EMP. And so we keep all of our plugs and our cords wound in a coil.
Fantastic advice. I believe this might actually be for Roseanne, just general. I think does TACDA run a HF radio net?
Actually, no, because I don't know what that is.
That's fair.
Since I run everything, I know that we don't know what that. I don't know what that is. Sorry.
Okay. That's high frequency, and that would be the ham radio. And the high frequency nets really would be neat. I ran one on one for quite a while, and had to go into to Denver, into that Denver area, and the high frequency, you don't need a relay switch. I'm sure somebody, I'm sure whoever is asking is much more able to talk about ham than I am. But you don't need to have a
Repeater.
A repeater, that's the word. And it actually bounces off the stratosphere some way, but it would really be fun to have a high frequency net. None of us, as far as I know, are ham operators anymore, but we would love to have that capability. Maybe someone out there in our people.
Yeah,
maybe
I do have a list of ham radio people that are TACDA members, so we can get them on a panel and get a lot of those questions answered.
We would have to look at the 480 meter rather than the 2 meter. The 2 meter is just a very, very high frequency, and so we need to have that low frequency, and in the
20 meters is your
80 meter. Yeah, 40 to 80 meter.
20 is the best long range.
I've only got technician class currently. I don't have the room or set up for a for a big old antenna. I'd love to do that though, so I get cross country. But I've only got small little handheld guys for now. But I think a HF net in the future could be a really cool option. Let's see. There was a question on Mormon LDS bunkers. I can confirm those do not exist.
I think we know.
I worked on Temple Square on the grounds crew. I was in the tunnels underneath. They're literally just tunnels for golf carts. They're really not that exciting. It's a tunnel. That's it. If you want to get some food, you go that way. Okay. If you want to go to like a basement where you see a bunch of really boring generators, you go over there. So it's really not that exciting. So, yeah, food stores and storage, yes. Bunkers, no. Paul.
In 1988, when I first started researching shelters, there was no information available from the federal government or the state government. So I went up with the CEM office, and I met a population protection planner who was very helpful. And he let me have run of the whole library, and he let me look at the binders of the state evacuation plans. And so I opened it up, and there's a map, and it has little locations on the map. Says 285 families to be fed and housed here, and 350 families to be fed and housed here. And I said, what does that mean? Fed and housed here. And so he got up and closed the door, and he sat down and he said, there is no food. There are no tents. You are on your own. We have these plans so that when a concerned citizen calls the county commission, they can say, we have evacuation plans. Don't worry about it. Go back to work.
Paper shuffling.
There are no tents.
Yeah, we don't have any civil defense shelters available to the general population, unlike Switzerland and Norway and the Nordic countries.
Norway, Sweden,
Russia. That's sad.
China.
Finland can put 115% of its population underground because they also will put the visitors underground. They've done. Finland is. I did a whole thing in my Substack about Finland's program. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Incredible.
They're still digging, by the way.
Sorry?
They're still digging.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and they're beautiful. They have swimming pools and ping pong
Yeah.
tables and
Of
places for
course,
meetings and
we
yeah,
live next door to
yeah,
the Soviet Union. We
cafeterias.
needed to be prepared.
Yep.
Yeah.
Requires a
It was a
socialist
bad
type
neighborhood, right?
government. A socialist type government can demand that they have the shelters, but we don't do that. Our representatives want to get elected, and unless enough people are demanding it, we're not going to get the shelters.
I think
It's also
Jim,
easier with, a 50th or 100th of the population. It's a little easier to shelter a couple
Yeah.
million than it is
Right.
300 to 400. And Jim, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have to go. So
Go.
if anybody has any
Take care.
questions for me, they can email Roseanne with the questions, and I'll be happy to answer them at that point. So, and
Email is info@tacda.org.
that's what,
TACDA.
that's what it is. I appreciate everybody being here, and I hope to see y'all again
Thanks, Jim.
Take care.
very soon. All right,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Input.
Jim.
And the next question we got is for Sharon. Do you believe in the nuclear winter hypothesis in a large nuclear exchange scenario?
I actually don't. They've done a lot of research on that, and sometimes they like to use that as just a scare tactic. But I just do not believe that that's going to actually be a scenario.
I would also add, they have documented a nuclear winter type situation, or at least a less than a warm summer with some of the large volcanic eruptions that did put a lot of ash in the air. I think the Mount Vesuvius actually caused the summer to be less than ideal in the northern United States back in the 1830 or so, or it was before the
1888, I think, was Krakatoa.
Yeah, Krakatoa
1888,
brought 4 degrees. Krakatoa brought the world temperature down 4 degrees.
Yeah. However, I would say the trend is to have much smaller nuclear weapons, and so they and to use them a little bit more effectively and such. So I would say, if you had big, 10 to 50 megaton bombs going off as ground bursts or whatever, that would be a possibility. However, the trend is to dial those back to maybe less than a megaton and have more, but much smaller weapons, and they would tend to be or not get as much ash and dirt as high into the atmosphere, and so the nuclear winter effects would be much lighter.
Well, and when you look at nuclear winter, I mean, we looked at volcanoes the year of no summer, for instance, and the nuclear winter thing is much, they're claiming much more than just the 4-degree drop in that nuclear winter scenario.
Yeah,
So it
claiming
be a
50
little
degrees.
cooler, it could be some problems, but not like they're claiming.
Yeah, it's not going to be as dramatic as everyone is proposing.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. And Mike, looks like you've got your hand up.
Hey, thanks, guys. This is my first time on a call, and I think what you're doing is fabulous. Just a real quick introduction. I'm a 40-year paramedic. My first career, I served as a paramedic with special operations with the FBI, and I just retired as a state director for EMS for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I'm involved in an organization called FIR. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called the Foundation for Infrastructure Resilience. I think General Bob Newman has reached out to some of your leadership.
Yeah, he
And
was in the last meeting.
yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
But I think what you're doing is awesome. And I just want to, reach out and see how we can network together because I think we have the same mission. And what we're doing is trying to protect our population. And just listening to the conversation tonight, I'm very impressed. And I would like to invite some of your leadership to our call. We have a weekly call too, and just see how we can possibly network moving forward. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now,
Well, we love
and
networking. That'd be great.
yeah,
We're-
and I think yes, sir.
We're actually scheduled to listen in on your meeting tomorrow morning,
Oh,
and then
General Newman's one step ahead of me already.
Yes.
So.
and then I believe we're supposed to Actually, he's going to give us 10 minutes to make a presentation in a couple of weeks from tomorrow.
Outstanding. That's awesome.
That's
I mean,
that is the plan as of
good
right now.
deal. Absolutely. Well, great. Well, I won't keep any more time. I love listening to your conversation, and hopefully we can network and move forward in the future together, and maybe work on some projects collaboratively.
Yeah.
Good to meet you, Mike.
Good to meet you, Mike. Thank you. Looking forward to it. We got two more EMP questions, actually. We got, let's see, I'll hit on Bruce's. That's a shorter one. Do lined or unlined cans make a difference? I think he's referring to trash cans.
I think
That's a question for me. Or who's that for?
Whoever wants to take it. Lined or unlined? Oh, paint. It is your paint cans. If you're using paint cans to store something, wouldn't a lined or unlined paint can be preferable for a DIY Faraday cage?
I would keep it as they sell them as pure metal. And so you're safe with that. And then, you can seal it by just taking a hammer like you do with any paint can. And it's not going to hold much more than a cell phone. So
Yeah, USB drives and stuff. Yeah, it's something.
yeah, true.
Dan, I see your hand up there. What you got for us?
Yeah, hey, going back to the Fieldcraft and survival, I threw it in the chat, but I always reference U.S. Army Manual 21-76 survival. It's ancient, it's old, but it's got a lot of basic, really good Fieldcraft in it, and you probably buy them for like $5 on the internet as reprints. Yeah, it's the way I was trained way back when, and the subsequent versions. But it's a great book for just simple how to survive in the woods stuff that us basic infantrymen needed to be taught at a very young age.
Fantastic resource. Thank you. Yeah, those manuals where they're meant for essentially young guys being thrown into war. You can't get much simpler than that. Okay, hey, you were on a farm. Here you go. Here's how to survive. Fantastic resource. Thank you. I think, let's see. Next one is still some EMP questions. I have a steel 10 by 12 storage building. Is there a way I can modify it to make it a Faraday cage? I have solar generators and panels, but I'm worried an EMP would fry it. Oh, Dan, your hand is still up, by the way. I don't want to skip you. Nope, all good. All right, Paul, take it away.
There's a great article online called An Introduction to Electromagnetic Pulse, and it's printed in Popular, I think it's Popular Science. But anyway, it's written by Emmanuelson, and he's an electrical engineer. I think he's still around. But anyway, he did a lot of work with television radio transmitters, big high-powered transmitters, and some of the television transmitters had 1,000,000-watt transmitters, and he built a aluminum carport to park his car under at the base of the transmitter. And he said he had very sophisticated, expensive meters that he could measure the field strength of RF fields. And he said that just that aluminum carport between his car and the antenna reduced the RF field strength like by 50 dB. I mean, he was shocked at how much that aluminum shed reduce. I mean, it's not going to eliminate your exposure to EMP, but it's if whatever you put in there is going to be orders of magnitude better off than if it was not in that crude aluminum structure. But for a Faraday cage, you need to have all 6 sides, basically, soldered joints and everything to, be truly effective. But who's to say, what level of protection your device needs? Most vehicles are they stopped testing vehicles in the mid to late 1990s on EMP simulators. And so the EMP Commission, the Congressional EMP Commission, found that they expect to lose 6% of the national light vehicle fleet. This article, An Introduction to Electromagnetic Pulse, has a blue link in there that takes you to the study they did on light vehicles. It's all in there. But if none of the vehicles that were running, if the vehicles were not running at the time of insult, they virtually all started and ran. It's when the vehicles were running at the time of insult that there were differences between brands and, architecture in the vehicles. These are mid 1990s to late 1990s vehicles. Today's vehicles are basically rolling cellular phones. And instead of having one or two or three electronic control units in them, they have over 100 electronic control units that run everything. So I'm not too excited about driving a new vehicle right now. Most of my vehicles are 27 years old for a reason. So you can try to find that article in the Introduction to Electromagnetic Pulse by Jerry Emanuelson. And there's a ton of information in there on that.
We use a shipping container for our diesel generators, and they're pretty hardy, Paul says, but
a
even
wooden floor.
It doesn't have it metal underneath it.
No, it's a wooden floor.
Just wooden.
Yep. But my cell phone dies when I go in there. So
That's a good idea, or it's a good indication it might work pretty good.
it helps. It's not perfect.
I think actually along those lines, next question is, are portable gas generators susceptible to EMP? If so, how do you protect it without building a huge steel-lined box for a Faraday cage? I mean, the initial thought is learn how to swap out the parts and store the susceptible parts in the paint can or something.
I
Take it
had
away.
one of those little Paul, was it a 2 kW, that little gasoline one I have? But anyway, I took some fine mesh and set it on the mesh, and then pulled that metal all the way around and stapled it shut and put the cord inside. And I don't know if that would help or not. I think it would probably help, because that fine mesh, I don't know, EMP is every frequency, but that's what I did, and it might help enough to protect it. Other than that, those that are sheltering in metal shelters, then keep it down there and in the shelter, and then carry it outside to run it after 2 weeks or whenever you have to charge your batteries. But
in my conversations with Bron Secotis, he said that the portable generator that is not running and is not connected to a 50-foot extension cord, hello antenna, is probably going to survive. Your biggest problem is going to be fuel.
yeah, you run out pretty quick.
So if you're running it and it's connected to a 50-foot cord that goes to a house with 5 miles of wire in the house, then there's your antenna effect. But if it's not running and not connected, it's probably pretty hardy.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Over before you turn it on.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think we're at the end of our time here. We got enough for 2
Only
questions.
two of them.
Yep. First one being Dan. What you got?
Yeah, you raised a very interesting question. I have a 20 kW Kohler standby on the house, which only runs when the power is off unless it's in a test cycle. But you just told me what I basically have it attached to is a huge antenna, because it is attached to the house to the transfer switches. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because the well houses here in my area for the water system have backup generators wired to them. So I went into my water utility office and talked to a civil engineer, and I said, what happens to our water system in an EMP? And he looked at me and said, the city will die. Now, after that, he explained that the generators that they have sitting there have circuit cards in them, bigger than my laptop. And those circuit cards are not shielded. They're not. They don't have any surge suppression devices on the lines or anything. He says those generators are as good as dead. The control centers with all the computer screens everywhere, they're all dead. The motors on the valves that raise and lower the valves in the big massive water system, they all have circuit cards in them. They're all dead. So, I mean, he went into, great detail on why the massive water infrastructure will collapse. But yeah, if you have a generator that's hardwired, to the grid with a transfer switch, that's just going to arc right over.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But great for an
Thank you.
earthquake.
That puts a hole in my plan, right? So,
It's-
because I got, I'm on a well, so that's my backup plan for when our
Have
power
a
goes
backup
out.
well, like
Uh,
solar powered wells. Those are pretty cool because they run on solar power, and they maybe only give you a gallon a minute, but in an hour that's 60 gallons.
well, I'll have to go on those hand crank like I had on the
Yeah,
farm, right? Just be
yeah,
flipping up and down and the water comes out,
yeah.
That's EMP
That's
hardened.
EMP hardened.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Best of worlds.
And you have no idea how lucky you are having a well.
I'm sitting here in an apartment going, oh boy.
Yeah, so you'd have to figure out which circuit boards in the standby generator are right susceptible, right? But even at that, sounds like the house will get fried anyhow. So
Yeah,
It's a catch-22. You have a generator or solar hooked up for off-grid or supplemental living. That's which is great day to day, but in the same vein, it makes you vulnerable to other threats.
right, right.
It's a catch-22. It's tricky.
I don't think I want to reach up and shut that off.
Right. No,
Oh,
no. Well, it's a low probability, high consequence event. That's right.
yep,
That's where it sits in,
exactly.
that's where it sits in the scale.
It's a
All
tricky
right.
one to say.
Yeah, more food for thought.
Yep.
Maybe if it weren't
Sometimes
permanently connected and you had that in a larger metal container, you could set it there and then connect it when you need it afterwards. Can't imagine there'd be too many EMPs.
this is true. And I think, someone asked about a summary document for transitioning to long grid down living. Roseanne posted that in chat for the TACDA Academy of how to do that. And it looks like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, we got all the questions. Perfect timing, too. So, looks like yeah, thank you everybody so much for attending, for bringing some amazing questions, and for everybody here on the board and part of TACDA being willing to answer and share expertise. This was a ton of fun. So I hope everybody likewise enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Parker.
Good job, Parker.
Thank you, Parker. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Everyone.
Good night.